Have you ever felt lonely in a crowded place? Say, like church. I always think that's the worst place to feel lonely. Do you feel that way too? Because after all, God made us for each other. I like to say if we were meant to be alone, God would have given us each our own planet. And obviously, He didn't, because you're here listening to this podcast. In fact, I would like to ask you, as my favorite listener, if you would take the time to message me or email me a story of when you felt lonely, especially when you felt lonely in church or around Christians. Um, I just kind of want to collect those stories because I think they're heartbreaking, and I want to break through those stories with the ministry God's given me with hospitality and what we can do about it because it's hard. Loneliness is a disease, it's its own disease. And so today I'm going to tell you a story about how I felt once at church, and I call it the parking lot blues. One Sunday after church, I stood by my car before getting in and I looked around me. Now, this is when I was single. I was probably around 30. And, I'm a late bloomer. And I loved my church family and I knew they loved me. They treated me with great love. But after church, here I was looking around, and there were young parents busy getting their tired kids buckled in, and they didn't seem to give me a second thought. Their minds were on the home and lunch and naps, all in short order. And now that I've been a mother, I understand that. But at the time, I didn't quite get it. And as the cars and the vans drove away, that was at the beginning of those vans. Hands were waving, and I heard voices ring out, "So long, have a great rest of your day. Goodbye, Sue." As I said, this was my church family, and I felt a part of it. I knew my church people needed to get out and get home, but that day I paused and I pondered while watching the cars leave one by one. I've never forgotten it. I wish I would have written down the date. And I pondered, why didn't someone invite me home for Sunday dinner? That's what we called it growing up. Sunday dinner was lunchtime on Sunday, and it included roast beef or chicken, potatoes and gravy or rice, and dessert. And if it were at my mother's, Jello. Sunday supper at around 6 involved a simpler fare like grilled cheese or BLTs, maybe tacos, and leftover dessert if we were lucky. Lunch or dinner, I was not fussy. I would have loved an invitation that day. If Mom were here, I mused, she would have asked me. Mom's hospitality radar, in good working order on most days, placed itself on high alert every Sunday morning, even though she taught Sunday school most years. Church was for worship, sure. Teaching and praise, you bet. But for Betty Moore, my mother, Sundays were perfect for inviting the new family, the single person, the grieving widow, the odd man out, the best friends, and the newcomers. Mom baked on Saturday often and prepped on Sunday morning with this certainty and anticipation. There will be company around our table. The only question is who and how many. Will we need 2 or 1 extra leaves for the table? I knew exactly where to go to get those extra leaves. It was at this slender closet at the end of our hallway by the bedrooms. And Mom would always say, "Sue, get the extra leaves for the table." Now, it's how my brothers and sisters were raised. Sunday included an invitation, either one given or one received. Mom would also say, "Sue, get out the good china," because she believed good china was for every Sunday, even if we didn't have company. And I would ask her which one, Grandma's china or her china. Sunday included an invitation, and I had not received any. Now, single in my 20s, I was in a new career, a new town, and a new church, and I felt okay mostly. Life was full. I was teaching high school. Those high school kids, they needed me and I needed them. It was full and it was purposeful, but I was lonely on occasion, and I wondered why families didn't ask me over for Sunday dinner. All I could think of was that my church friends must have thought that I had such an exciting single life that I wouldn't want to come home to their normal, ordinary home and stand at the sink and help them peel potatoes or hold their babies while they got dinner or supper, whatever it was, on, and then sit down at their table to get better acquainted. I didn't think I was asking much. But that was exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to be part of a family, if just for an hour or two. The Bible says God sets the lonely in families, and I was lonely. I needed to be set somewhere, just like a table setting. Well, I got tired of waiting. Finally, I called a bunch of ladies and I said, "Can you come for brunch on Saturday?" Ladies and brunch go together like pancakes and chocolate chips. And mid-morning on a weekend was easy for my schedule and less fuss all around. I was working full time. I couldn't do much on weeknights. And I didn't have a lot of money. I taught high school at a Christian high school. And these new ladies, these new friends, several of whom were my mother's age, may have been surprised when they got the invitation. Looking back, I imagine they may have had their own big to-do list for their Saturday mornings, but they came anyway. They may have also been surprised I could cook. No, I'm not sure I could cook, but I could read. Nowadays, you have Google, so it's really easy. I knew they liked it because they came more than once, perhaps because they didn't have to do the cooking. Or maybe they just liked leaving their Saturday to-do list behind for a bit longer. Maybe they just liked being together. Or maybe they just liked me. I was lonely. I needed family, so I gathered some folks. Sometimes you just have to make it happen and not wait for someone else to pick up the phone or to send a text. I want to say that again because that's probably the biggest point of this podcast today. Sometimes you just have to make it happen and not wait for someone else to invite you. I invited people over because I needed friends. I like to think of hospitality as self-serving sanctification. God says to be hospitable for the sake of others. So when we obey him, that's sanctification. But it's for our sake just as much. So it is kind of self-serving. God's commands are so expedient, and they work for our good as well as for his glory because he loves us. They all work together that way because he's so loving. Now, I don't think people thought I would be bad company or that I would run off with the soup ladle if they had me over for dinner. I just think they didn't think of me at all. Maybe that's what loneliness is, to believe that you aren't even thought about. Loneliness is the feeling that no one is thinking about you, much less cares about you and what you're going through. No one thought about a short guy named Zacchaeus. He needed friends, but no one invited him for dinner or Saturday brunch. They knew better. Mom may have even hesitated, and no one would blame her. Zacchaeus was a cheat and a tax collector, if you know the story. Now, taxes are part of life, but you have to pay more than, but if you have to pay more than what is required, and that was more than most people could tolerate. Zacchaeus didn't get many invitations to dinner. They probably thought, well, he has more money than we do anyway. He can take himself out. And after all, he might take home the good silver as his due, as well as eat all the dessert and the strawberry jello with Cool Whip, or Dream Whip, my mother would use. Who wants a short, cheating tax collector as a guest? No one. I'm guessing Zacchaeus was used to it, being alone and all, and richer than his neighbors. People use money as a replacement for most things, even though they find out eventually, if they're honest, that wealth causes more headaches than it's worth. And it's not worth losing friends, family, or reputation. But when Zacchaeus heard Jesus was coming to town, He wanted to see what all the commotion was about. One problem, though, he was short, too short to see over the crowds. It would have been nice to have a few pals who might make room or offer to lift him up on their shoulders. No one offered. He probably wasn't surprised. He knew he didn't have any friends, not in that crowd. So he ran ahead and he found a sycamore tree, climbed on up where no one could notice that he was all on his own. Someone noticed. Here it was, after all, someone was thinking about Zacchaeus. Jesus stopped under his tree, looked up right at him, and called him by name. Wow. When we feel lonely, we try to look fine without actually being fine. We need to connect with others, and it's no secret that we do. But when we are lonely, we keep it a secret. We feel shame with loneliness, and we know where shame comes from. Shame comes from the pit, and God's children are not pit people. We feel shame to think no one has texted or called or wanted to be with us when it looks like everyone else has someone. So we get busy hoping that no one notices that we are alone again. It's best to stay out of the way and out of the crowds and pretend it doesn't matter, that no one knows how we really feel. The thing is, God knows. He knows everything. He knows my sad heart and my name. And he stops right next to me to let me know he does. I just need to be looking for him like Zacchaeus did, even though Zacchaeus didn't know all the reasons why he was looking for him. Zacchaeus, Jesus called out, quick, come down. Here's the best part. Jesus invites himself for dinner. I must be a guest in your home today. Jesus was a little pushy. He didn't wait around to be asked. Don't you love that? Sometimes you can't wait around when important things need to happen. Like I just said, you need to make it happen. And Jesus did. Zacchaeus changed on the spot. Maybe because it was Jesus who noticed him and said his name. The Son of God has that effect on folks. Look, Lord, Zacchaeus said, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor. And if I have cheated anybody out of anything, I will pay back 4 times the amount. Wow, that was a big transformation. All it took was a look from Jesus. This is better than the average result of a dinner invitation. Though some religious types got mad at Jesus because he was eating with a cheating short tax collector, I imagine Zacchaeus got more invitations after that. I sure did. God set me in some families. I had to be a little pushy. At least I had to take the first step. Blessings on both sides, but mostly on mine. By the time I left that area, I left to go work in Brazil for 2 years. I had several women, older and wiser, who loved me, and they poured their lives into mine. I might call and say, you want to go to lunch? I need some advice, usually about boy problems, and lunch out, and they would meet me, and they would pay the bill too, which was nice. I felt noticed and loved through time spent with Annie Keno, Jan Muston, Jeanette Gray, Phyllis Wilderson, Trish Larson, and others. When they met with me, it was like Jesus looking through the window of my Toyota Camry to say, hey, Sue, I see you, and I'm coming over, and we're going to make some changes where changes need making. Oh, another one was Jean Garrison. So sweet. We can go to church a long time before we feel like family. We might need to make the first move. My church became family, and it started with an egg bake and a coffee cake. And eventually it included some mini apple crisps. When God led me to the mission field, the hardest part about leaving the U.S. was leaving family and friends. I had to start that inviting thing all over again when I got to Brazil, but this time I had help. I walked into my new apartment in Brasilia and I met Joan. a Bible translator from England. She was short too and a little direct, like Jesus, and everyone loved her. It didn't take long for me to love her too. She said, "Sue, you will only be here for 2 years. Quick, you need to make friends in a hurry." I smiled and I asked if I could unpack first. She said, "You need to invite people over, like on Friday." I knew she was right. I had done this before and I knew it worked. Joan made the guest list. We sent out the invitations, both to singles and to families, a different list each week for the next 6 weeks on Friday night. The single missionaries thanked us for inviting them alongside the families. I've never forgotten that. We need to be together, single, married, and single again. We need each other. Now, I served apple crisp and vanilla ice cream every Friday night for 6 weeks. I became an expert in apple crisp. There were no chocolate chips to make cookies in Brazil in those days. Now, if you're feeling lonely at times, you are not alone. Other people might feel alone too. Make that call. I'll give you my recipe for apple crisp. It's a killer for loneliness. Jesus is looking at you and he knows your name. He wants to come to your house for dinner, to maybe make some changes in your life for your good and his glory. It's okay if he's pushy. It just means that he's thinking about you. Remember to send me your story of when you felt a little isolated or too alone in your church family. My email is sue@welcomeheart.com. sue@welcomeheart.com. I'd love to hear your story, and with your permission, I'd love to share it on a podcast. I think it helps us when we hear each other's stories, and it also helps us when we hear each other's ideas of what we can do about our loneliness. Pray this prayer with me. Dear Father, you adopted me into your family. Help me remember you are always with me. Thank you that you stopped to see Zacchaeus. What a huge difference that made. Thank you that you know my name and that you will never leave me. Thank you and amen. Okay, I have a little assignment for you. Think of someone that you could invite for apple crisp this week so that you can feel set in a family or that someone could be set in yours. Building community works both ways and often simultaneously. Have a wonderful day and check out the recipe in show notes.